There's a certain kind of Dutch childhood that you can't really explain. You just had to live it. A time before smartphones, before endless apps, when the biggest thrill in your day came from a wooden puzzle, a set of marbles, or a cartoon rabbit drawn with only a few lines. And if you grew up in the Netherlands, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These weren't just toys. They were tiny pieces of Dutch culture, passed from one generation to the next, shaping memories that still feel vivid decades later. But here's the strange part. While some of these toys became global icons, others simply faded away, disappearing so quietly that most people forgot they even existed. Some turned into collector's items. Others survived only in attic boxes, thrift stores, and the minds of people who remember a very different kind of childhood. And a few? Rumors suggest they vanished because of surprising changes in fashion, safety rules, or just the arrival of something newer and flashier. So before we dive back into that world of wooden wheels, tin cars, chalk-covered sidewalks, and hand-painted characters, let's rewind for a moment, because the story of these old Dutch toys isn't just about what they were. It's about the small, unforgettable moments they created. And if any of these memories hit you right in the nostalgia, don't worry, you're definitely not alone. For a lot of Dutch kids, the first toys they ever held weren't action figures or fancy electronics. They were simple characters that felt almost like part of the family. And none captured that feeling more than Nijntje, known to the rest of the world as Miffy. Created in 1955 by Dick Bruna, this tiny white rabbit looked so simple that adults underestimated her. But that was the entire charm. Clean lines, soft colors, no unnecessary details. It was a character kids could instantly recognize, even from across the room. You'd see her on bookshelves, lunchboxes, wallpaper, plushies, lamps, everywhere. And somehow, despite the minimal design, she carried a warmth that stuck with people long after they grew up. Just as iconic were Jip and Janneke, the black and white silhouettes that almost every Dutch household had somewhere. Whether it was a puzzle, a mug, a birthday card, or one of the little figurines, these characters represented something familiar and comforting. Annie M.G. Schmidt's writing and Fiep Westendorp's illustrations weren't just popular. They became a piece of the national identity. Even today, people instantly feel a wave of nostalgia whenever they see those silhouettes staring back. But what made these characters so lasting wasn't their popularity alone. It was how they captured those everyday childhood moments. Bedtime, playing outside, helping in the kitchen, visiting grandparents. They were simple stories, but they reflected real life. And that's what gave them staying power. For many, these weren't just toys or books. They were the first doorway into imagination. But not every beloved Dutch toy came from polished designs or famous authors. And some of the most unforgettable ones were built by hand, one wooden block at a time. Some of the most unforgettable Dutch toys didn't come from big factories at all. They were built at home, in small workshops, or even in barns behind old farmhouses. And nothing captures that homemade Dutch spirit better than the houten, klompvoertuigen. These were tiny cars, trucks, and even little helicopters carved straight out of worn-out clogs. Kids didn't think about the craftsmanship behind them. They just knew the wheels rolled, the paint chipped in the corners, and the shape felt oddly perfect in their hands. But for adults looking back now, there's something almost magical about the idea that a simple, everyday object could be turned into a toy with a bit of creativity and a carving knife. Alongside those clog creations were the traditional wooden dolls, often dressed in colorful regional Dutch costumes. Some came from local markets. Others were passed down from older relatives. And a few were actually imported, but somehow became woven into Dutch childhood anyway. They had stiff limbs, painted faces, and outfits that looked like they came straight out of a history book. And even if kids didn't treat them gently, these dolls were built to survive years of being dropped, carried, and swapped between siblings. What made these handmade toys special wasn't just their look, it was the quirks. Every clog vehicle had small imperfections. Every wooden doll had a slightly different face. These weren't mass-produced items. They were tiny, one-of-a-kind creations. And because of that, they carried a kind of personality you don't really find in modern toys. Of course, wooden toys were only half the story, because the moment metal and miniature models arrived, Dutch kids became completely obsessed. And that's where the collectibles era truly began. Once metal toys entered the picture, everything changed. Suddenly, Dutch kids weren't just playing, they were collecting, trading, showing off. And nothing fueled that obsession more than the dinky toys and the classic blikken speelgoed. These tiny die-cast cars and shiny tin toys looked almost too perfect to touch, yet they still ended up racing across living room floors, smashing into table legs, and gathering dents that somehow made them even cooler. For a lot of children, the real thrill wasn't just owning these miniature cars. It was the feeling that you were holding something important, something grown up. The doors clicked open, the wheels spun smoothly, and the paint gleamed in the sunlight. And even though kids treated them like everyday toys, many of these little cars are now rare collectibles, with some models going for surprising amounts of money online. It's funny how something that once got shoved into a toy box is suddenly worth more than the bicycle you rode to school. Tin toys were just as captivating, with bright colors, cranking mechanisms, and a style that felt straight out of a different era. They had a charm that didn't need batteries or screens. You'd wind them up, set them down, and watch them wobble, roll, or spark their way across the floor. It was simple, unpredictable fun. But these collectibles didn't just sit on shelves. They were part of daily childhood battles, racing contests on the sidewalk, trades during recess, and arguments about which model was the fastest or rarest. Everyone had their personal favorites, and everyone believed theirs was somehow special. But toys weren't just about collecting. For most Dutch kids, the real excitement happened outside, right on the street, where games turned every neighborhood into a giant playground. Step outside any Dutch neighborhood a few decades ago, and you'd hear the same sounds: laughter, shouting, the clack of marbles, and the crash of tin cans hitting the pavement. Outdoor play wasn't just a hobby, it was the heart of childhood. And if you grew up in the Netherlands, chances are you spent countless afternoons battling it out in a dusty schoolyard over one simple game: knikkeren. Marbles weren't just marbles, they were trophies. You had your commons, your shiny specials, and that one prized marble you guarded like treasure. Winning a round felt like conquering a kingdom. Losing one? That stayed with you for days. Then there was blikken, the game that turned every kid into a sharpshooter. A stack of cans balanced unevenly, a ball in your hand, and the pressure to knock everything down in one throw. Whether it was at the local kermis or just set up in your backyard, the thrill was the same. You hit it right, and the whole tower came crashing down. You missed, and you'd hear about it from your friends for the rest of the day. But not all games were that loud. Some were almost old-fashioned, pulled straight out of the pages of history. Hoepelen, for example, rolling a big wooden hoop with a stick. Looks almost too simple to be fun, yet generations loved it for the challenge. And then there was opstelten lopen, walking on stilts. If you could stay balanced, even for a few seconds, you instantly felt 10 feet tall. It required skill, confidence, and usually a few good falls before you got the hang of it. These games didn't need electricity, screens, or instructions. They just needed space, a little imagination, and a few friends who were just as eager to play. And even though the rules were simple, the memories were anything but. But the outdoor fun didn't stop there, because some games became so deeply rooted in Dutch culture that they showed up at every family gathering, birthday party, and holiday celebration. Some games weren't just for the schoolyard, they were part of the culture itself. And no Dutch household felt complete without a long, polished wooden board waiting in a closet or leaning against a wall. Sjoelen wasn't just a game, it was a ritual. Birthdays, holidays, family dinners. Sooner or later, someone would pull out the shuffleboard, and suddenly the living room turned into a tournament. You'd slide wooden pucks with laser focus, aiming for that perfect score, while the rest of the family pretended they weren't secretly trying to beat your record. It didn't matter if you were 7 or 70. Everyone played, everyone competed, and everyone had their own technique they swore was unbeatable. But when the weather was nice, the action moved right back outside. Stupkrijten, or sidewalk chalk, covered entire neighborhoods with hopscotch grids, arrows pointing to imaginary treasure, and drawings that stretched across the pavement for meters. It wasn't just art, it was communication. Kids left messages for each other, created obstacle courses, and turned empty sidewalks into colorful playgrounds. Rain might wash everything away, but that only meant the canvas was ready for a new creation the next day. And then there was Bellenblazen, the one activity that somehow never got old. There was something almost magical about dipping a wand into soapy liquid and blowing bubbles into the air, each one catching the light, drifting away, and disappearing before you could catch it. It didn't matter how many times you did it, you'd always chase that one bubble floating just out of reach. These games were simple, sure, but that simplicity is exactly why they lasted through generations. They didn't need batteries, they didn't break easily. They brought families together and kept kids outside until the streetlights came on. And yet, as the 70s and 80s rolled in, something new arrived. Creative toys that changed how Dutch kids played and opened the door to an entirely different kind of imagination. By the time the 70s and 80s arrived, Dutch childhood started shifting into a more creative era. Kids still played outside, sure. But suddenly, there were toys that encouraged you to sit down, focus, and actually make something. And nothing captured that new wave better than the Bruynzeel paint-by-number kits. These weren't just random pictures. You'd often find Dutch landscapes, windmills, farm animals, and scenes that felt familiar. You opened the box, saw the tiny numbered sections, and instantly knew you were about to spend hours trying to stay inside the lines. For some kids, it was the first time they ever felt like real artists, even if the painting didn't end up looking quite like the picture on the box. But that didn't matter. Around the same time, the Netherlands was hit with a different wave of excitement. Pippi Longstocking. Even though she was technically a Swedish character, the Dutch embraced her like she was one of their own. The TV reruns made her a household name, and suddenly every toy store was selling Pippi dolls, books, and costumes. She was wild, fearless, funny, and totally unlike the polite, organized characters Dutch children were used to. These were the objects that shaped afternoons, friendships, birthdays, and lazy summer days. They didn't just entertain, they defined an entire generation of Dutch kids who grew up in a world that felt smaller, slower, and maybe a little more magical than today's fast-paced life. And while many of these toys have disappeared from stores, they still live on in those attic boxes, old photos, and the stories people share when they start reminiscing. And that's the strange part. For something so simple, these toys left a mark that's hard to explain. Maybe it's because they were handmade. Maybe it's because they were shared with friends. Or maybe it's because they belonged to a time when imagination did most of the work. But whatever the reason, one thing is certain. If you grew up in the Netherlands during those years, these toys weren't just part of your childhood. They were your childhood. And even now, just hearing their names is enough to bring you right back to those moments when life felt a little lighter and the world felt endlessly playful. Because in the end, the toys may have been simple, but the memories, those were priceless. And that's a trip down memory lane through some of the most unforgettable Dutch toys. Which one brought back the strongest childhood memory for you? Did you spend hours with marbles, sjoelen, or chasing bubbles across the sidewalk? If you loved this journey back to simpler times and want more stories about Dutch culture, nostalgia, and forgotten treasures from the past, make sure to subscribe to Dear Old Holland and hit that notification bell. We've got plenty more trips down memory lane coming your way, and you won't want to miss a single one. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's keep exploring the Holland you remember, the one full of magic, toys, and memories that last a lifetime.